I was born in Atlanta, but only stayed there till I was 3 or 4. Then we moved to a very small town in South Carolina called Williamston, which is still a mill town that's sort of run by Roger Milliken. People lived in the, and almost all worked at the mill. I was raised there. We were the only Jewish family in a small Southern Baptist town. So most days, everyone told me in a very gracious way that I was going to hell. They say, you know, Mark, we love you so much, but you're going to hell. And I bought into that and got scared. So I went to synagogue and church. I was trying to cover all bases. And I had one really pretty professional theater nearby called the Greenville Little Theater. My dad was from Brooklyn, so I got to see the occasional show in New York. But every time I heard the season come out, I would draw pictures, I would research the heck out of each of the plays that were coming. I'd get the soundtracks if there were musicals, and it offered much more of a sense of escape than film did at the time. It was like the exact opposite of where I was living. I wrote screenplays and taught screenwriting, and I felt like I should make a couple of movies, which I did, a documentary about the Jazz and Heritage Festival in New Orleans, and a mock autobiographical sort of fictional film called Best Man. When screenwriting, you don't think in terms of scene, you think in terms of, well, no particular moment lasting more than a page and a half. It's a visual narrative, and so you move from image to image, and you move, I think by necessity, much more quickly. Now I know that you're supposed to have your conflict and the protagonist's goals set up in the first 10, 20 pages, even of a regular script, but I feel like you have to have it in the first 5 pages of a film. Let me tell you a story. When I was working on a documentary, it was going to be about 35 minutes, and I had 50 hours of film. So when I was trying to decide what image to work against another one, I started thinking how much it was like writing, because with writing you have this vast knowledge of words and a way to begin a sentence and the way to transition. It seemed very much like film, where you have these vast images, 45 hours of images to go in a 35-minute film. So the choices were very much like writing. And so when I taught writing, I used to teach it by editing, which I thought was a really interesting way to approach it, and a way the students understood, because they're so tied into cinema.
Right.
I loved film when I was growing up, and I've been pretty disappointed by film in the last many years. It's not that I haven't seen good ones, but it's just that the system for film almost necessitates worrying about financial gain. And in theater, although the audiences are much smaller and maybe are impacting fewer people, I think the impact is much greater. I think being live helps. I think there's an intimacy there that you can't have in film. I don't think many films are successful when they're narrated first person. You know, you'll have your Ferris Bueller's and they're fun, but then you take something like Equus and you transition that over literally, and having Richard Burton look at the camera just never worked the same way Dysart looking and talking to us works. I've always been most in love with theater as the art form that I like, and I think it has more power to be transformative. I love the fact that the play exists and then disappears, and so it still lives in your memory in a specific way. So I think just for me, it's got much more power, partially because of that, partially because you can work with characters, I think, much more intently. You know, even the successful films, I don't think, have the same subtleties of successful theater. I suppose they could, but I've been a film fan since 1959, and I just don't see it moving that way. I mean, even the movie that just came out, Inception, people are in love with it because it's a challenging movie. But it's not that challenging. You know, it's a dream within a dream within a dream. I think we long for adult entertainment so much. In the summer, that's been elevated to something that's really magnificent, but it's just a good, entertaining adventure film. Think about what Edward Albee said about holding a mirror up to society, but funneling it through you. And what do you see that you want to change? What do you see that you're critical of? What do you see that intrigues you? Start writing when you identify what that mirror represents to you. Then you have a place to go.